warming up, right?
I'm getting there. I hurt my knee.
Me too.
Me too. Sober up.
Yeah.
If you only knew.
Okay, you want to lead it?
So I think we do have a next phase proposal from CNS. They kind of ran through the schedule. The thought process would be that, remember, this is only the concept phase that we've hired them so far. So in order to answer a lot of the questions that we talked about today and really get down to the nitty-gritty with this project, we need to move to the next phase, which would be the design phase, where we really get into the construction documents, the actual engineering prints, where you get into electrical and structural and you know, all of the details that make a project come together. So we do have that proposal from them. It's in your binder there. It's about $1.5 million, I believe. 1.58 is their quote for engineering services through the end of the project. And I guess with that, you know, based on what we've heard from CNS, I'll turn it over to you folks to kind of determine what the next steps are. I'll speak for Joan for a second. This is a real meeting, so you can make motions. You know, if you want to move something forward, you're more than welcome to do that.
So would someone like to make a motion to move this to the design phase?
Are we gonna have comments?
Moved by Jerry. We'll get to discussion. I need a second.
I'll second it.
Second by Phil. Now we can have discussion, Greg.
Well, the reason I asked some of the questions I asked is because I understand that the existing structure and all that, you know, is fine, okay, out there at DSS. I'm going to talk about DSS, not the highway. The highway, that's fine, that whole concept there. But the DSS building, I do have a fight issue. I don't believe that it's in the taxpayers' best interest to take that building and gut it out and basically just reform it at a cost of where did I write it down? $6.6 million. Okay, I did some figuring, you know, and I went big. I went 42,000 square feet. And I did $350 a square foot, which sounded like a good number because I looked at their documents and I went higher than anything they had, or as high for the money. So it comes out to $14.7 million, okay? And with the state reimbursement that we would get from DSS if it was put on the second floor of a 42,000 square foot building, I thought they needed 21,000 square feet because that's what it says in here, 21,000 for the human services. Okay, so I just said, okay, the bottom floor be 21, top floor be 21, boom. Comes out to 9.1875 million for a brand new building. Not a used building, not using one over again. Then, if you look at the savings that we could also find with bringing DMV up there, because we'll have more square footage down below, we won't have to make any purchase offer down there that I heard of $500,000. There's a savings. That brings it down to $8.6 million for that building. Then we're going to save on the Board of Elections because they're going to be moving up there. That's $64,000 a year. So if you put that on 10 years, that's $640,000. So we're down to $8 million, and we end up with a brand new building. And if there is cost overruns, which I'm not saying there's going to be, but right now their cost is, if you change the cost to $300 a square foot, okay, from what they're putting down here at $225, so I'm only adding $75 a square foot, okay? So possibly if it goes up to 300, which we don't know because we don't really have an estimate of firm, correct? It's not firm that 225 is the number.
It's based on comparables, recent
Comparable.
comparables. Yeah.
Okay, okay, so if it goes up to 300, we're at $7.9 million. So we're almost spending the same amount of money to take an old building, gut it out, refab it, make it look pretty on the outside, and that's about all we're gonna get out of it. With this, with the other concept that I'm trying to present, we're gonna be at the same cost, we're gonna have twice as much room, we can put more people in that same building than what we have. We won't have to have DMV down there and everybody spread here and there. And here's another, we have to have this other discussion. What are we gonna do with DSS while they're gutting it? Nobody said a word about what to do, where to put them. Nobody has a plan. Does anybody have a plan? Did you have a plan?
We have several storefront options that we can look into, yeah.
We'll look into. You haven't looked into them. You don't know what it's gonna cost. How much is that gonna cost us? You know, there you go again. See, I'm looking, if you look at Board of Elections and say, we're gonna have to spend that amount per month, which is quite a bit. It was $5,400 a month. The option right now I've heard is Tops Plaza, where that vacant space is. Well, then you gotta rehab that, put office space in there. You're gonna have to put partitions up and move offices in. You're gonna have, you know, handicapped accessibility. You're gonna have all this stuff. We're gonna have some costs there to put an office space in for DSS. Okay, so I'm just trying to put out there what I think is kind of common sense, but maybe it's not. Maybe I'm off in la la land or something. But to me, if you left DSS where they are and you built a brand new one, you lose that whole year of having to put Jenny Jones and her crew, Office of the Aging, where are we putting them? You know, where are we putting them? We don't know. We don't know what it's going to cost. You know, no. But this way, they stay right where they are, make do, and we build a new building and be done with it. And we got a building that'll probably last for 50 years, you know, if we do it right. At $350 a square foot, you know, I think it should last. And then we take the old building, we keep it. It doesn't have to look pretty. It could be the maintenance shop, and it could be storage. We are lacking storage. The hospital's lacking storage. We can make that a cold storage building where they can put files and everything else. I mean, we got to keep everything for 100 years. So stack it in there. You know, it's got a concrete floor and a roof on it. Should last for a few years anyway. But that's just my perspective. You know, I don't know if it'll go or not go, but that's my way of thinking.
Anyone else have any other comments?
I don't like putting all my eggs in one basket. We just went through a pandemic. We had to separate people out. If we get all of our offices in one building and something such as the pandemic comes along, we're going to be totally shut down. It makes no sense. We've got to keep a few things separate.
Anyone else?
I mean, we had the facilities here except for a lot due to the pandemic. We downsized and we made it work. So, and it's just me speaking, not giving you a hard time. I don't think everybody being in one place is going to create that great problem if we have another one. Because look what we did here and we survived pretty well. And people were using that, so.
So Jerry, you made the motion, and you've been deeply involved. I've read the minutes. You've been in all
Forward.
meetings. And you're comfortable and content with the direction.
I am, and the reason for it was, I'll be honest with you, I believed in the other building we were looking at. The majority of legislators wanted to go this direction, so good, bad, or different, I'm giving 100% of it. And I think this is the right way to go, be honestly speaking, that we've been kicking this can down the road too damn long. to put it bluntly. You know, you look at the additional expense, we're spending $6 million roughly, and there's just kind of the outlining for highway, which if we built the other building for 12.5, highway wouldn't be included. So that's some of our additional costs. You know, it's the only savings we have are efficiencies. The more efficient we can become, the more savings, or the better savings we can have and keep the cost under control. And, you know, it may not be exactly the right way that we're proceeding to do it. Now, be honest with you, we did get rid of a few people up there, which I think helped make it work, so DSS, and we could bring someone else in. Because we did discuss that before about some of the outside agencies need to find their own homes, speaking honestly, because we need to take care of county, and at that point, we didn't want to do that. So we kind of solved a lot of problems. I did everything. We've left it up to the department heads, discussion with those. My only thing is give them the space they need to function.
Right.
And how they've set it up and this and that, haven't been involved in it, but we got Jackie a place by using the old highway building. I can't remember the exact figure on that. What was it, $1 million something roughly?
So, yeah.
You know, so soil and water. Jackie's got a house, and then what was it, USDA, I think's in the middle. So I think we've done very well as far as utilizing the existing buildings. Yeah, it's true that we would be, if we built, you know, probably a brick and mortar building, we might get a little bit more longevity out of it. But on the same aspect that, you know, if we have to renovate again 30 years and we're doing just that building, it's going to be paid for and cost effective.
Well, I didn't mean to put you on the spot, but but nobody's been more deeply involved in the before, you know, and after than you, and so
Well,
your opinion is something I wanted to hear.
You know, that's my feelings. I mean, I think we've gotten this far. We chose not to do the other one, so that's gone. We're not discussing that, what if, and this and that. I mean, we're at the point now that we either make a decision to move forward and make this stuff come to fruition in the near future.
I like what you said about let's quit kicking the can down the road.
Well, I mean, not to be negative and not blaming anybody. We've been at this since 2006.
You're blaming me.
No, I'm not. I'm talking about, you know.
Just kidding.
But you know, the thing is.
Right. It's way past time. Right.
Yeah, we should have been, whatever we do, we should have been able to make a decision before this, but not. But I think what we've got is good. It'll work for us, and it solves 90% of our problems.
One thing I didn't see or understand maybe, and maybe I'm looking at Joan on this, are we going to charge rent to the people that we're putting in the highway garage like we're getting rent now?
Yeah.
Okay, so that should be part of the equation.
Are we charging the soil and water rent?
Yeah.
Is it the
We are
plan?
not, I don't believe we are currently, and I think part of that reason is that she does all the seeker work for Jackie.
She does a lot of work.
She
for the
does a
county.
lot of
Yeah,
work
it's
for
been
us,
kind of
so
a wash.
that's
We're
kind of been a
getting
wash.
Not much, but.
We're getting we are getting revenue from Rural Development USDA, but not from Soil and Water.
And that was just an aside.
Yeah.
But you're right, Phil, that, whatever that amount is, say it's, you know, 20, 30,000, it does belong in our annual payment plan.
So the
You
new
know-
building discussion was done and had, and it was,
Before, on the
Yes.
new building?
yes.
So,
Well, I mean, yeah, we talked about it, we updated it, it went from, correct me if I'm wrong, my figures, 8.5 million when we originally looked at it, to 12.5 if we took it under there. That wasn't counting going ahead and going back through it and checking the structural, make sure it met the codes for now, and the majority felt that this is the direction we ought to head, so that's where we're at. So, I mean, if somebody feels different, we can still have it, but you're probably, be honest with you, you're not gonna get me to go back. It's just been too much. We're here, you know, whatever happened, happened, it's over with. We gotta make a decision on what we have in front of us.
Any other comments?
Just to clarify one thing, I had said before that the CNS fee was 1.58 and the actual amount is $1,470,540.
Minus
Minus
the
what we've
third-party testing and some other stuff, so.
Yeah, but we've already agreed to pay him some of that.
We've already paid you some of it.
Yes, yes.
But the only caveat I would throw in, whatever we decide to do, if we're not going all the way through with it, let's end it here. So
What's that mean, Jerry?
if we vote to go through the design phase, I think we ought to plan on building it. That's what I'm saying.
Thank you for clarity. Yeah.
You got thoughts, Dick? You've been involved in a lot of these.
I like new buildings. I don't think there's room for everything up on the Stowe Street end of it. And what we're looking at here is a highway garage and a DSS. So I think we still got to put the cost for DMV and Board of Elections someplace so that we've got a 100% usable project when we get all done.
Board of Elections, the way it stands right now, has a home.
That's right there up there.
Incorporated.
That's right there up there.
It's DMV.
That's
And we
right.
put out,
Board of Elections up there, you're right.
we put out a request, and, you know, we'll go from there. So, we're gonna have everything done in the very near future, otherwise we're gonna have one decision to make on top of this one.
All right, we ready to vote? All in favor to move this to design phase?
Aye.
Aye.
No.
Any opposed?
Me.
Show Greg opposed, motion carries.
So we will put forward an official resolution entering into an agreement with CNS at the July meeting. In the meantime, I think this acts as, you know, we don't want to delay it any longer. So you guys can get moving. We'll vote on the official contract, which Joan and your folks can hammer out the details between now and our July 6th meeting, I think. 7th meeting.
As part of that, there would be regular updates from them, CNS, to the county.
Sure. We can structure that, you know, I'll have to look at their.
It's
you know,
in the
what
proposal,
their-
bi-weekly
There you go, Patrick.
meetings,
Good.
yes.
Bi-weekly, good.
Now, who you'd like to establish for those meetings is great with me, you know.
Okay.
If we can come up with a committee, there's usually, you know, 3 to 5 people or so. Naturally, we're going to be meeting with departments, but if we have a small enough committee where you've got everything covered so that everybody's well represented, but yet not too big, that, you know, it goes from being 5 months of design to 8 months, 9 months of design. Naturally, we want to move this ahead too, you know, move it ahead expeditiously for everyone. So, but we can go through all that and establish who's going to be part of those.
Would you be opposed to doing what you did today at certain points?
Oh, not at all, no.
For
And
everybody?
yep, yeah, oh, definitely, yeah. I've done it in the past. Some people like that, and that's fine, yes, yeah. Yeah, I can present to the whole legislative committee and the public, you know, as you feel that at certain points, and we can delineate what those points would be, yeah.
And it could be a meeting that is mandatory, just optional for
Yeah, we've
any legislator that
we've
wanted to
reached
come.
this stage, and it's in there, and, you know, you get to ask the horses. not be relayed all the time. So you hear it first.
Sure, it makes me feel a lot better, honestly, because good, bad, or indifferent, people's comments are their comments and their thoughts, and, you know, it's one thing that, you know, you respect everybody's thoughts and comments, you all everybody gets together and we decide where to move from there, and we've got something rather than moving ahead and then having to go backwards. So I think that's a great idea. Yeah.
Thanks, Pat.
Great.
Thanks,
I don't
John.
want to take any more time in
Thank
case
you.
you have anything else to cover, but we really appreciate it. For those I haven't met in the past, it's nice meeting you. I look forward to working with you. You know, naturally you'll see myself and Chuck at the forefront, but there's a lot of other people you're also going to see, you know, passing through that are going to be, you know, working with us on developing this.
And as you can all see, Chuck cleans up well.
How about that?
Most of the time, you're gonna see him in regular.
See, nobody says that about me.
It's
Take care, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Ryan, I'm going to leave the rest of the copies over here, and this is a fairly good paperweight. Somebody noted that.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Have a good trip.
Okay, next on the list is a presentation regarding the Double Play Community Center. So, is there someone here for presentation, or
Nope, I'm going to be doing it.
you are the presenter?
You got it. Yes, if I'm doing it, it's going to take 2 hours.
We're not discussing this today?
The financial plan,
Yeah. Of the,
we can certainly.
well, no,
Yeah, that's a good question. So before we get on to maybe to the community center, I did hand out to everybody the financial plan for the CNS project that we were just discussing. You know, obviously, I feel very confident that we can afford it. I wanted to provide a updated, you can see this updated 6/21/21, because the ones I had given you guys in the past were around $15 million. I wanted to give you a new one that reflected the exact estimate from CNS's report, 18.8 million. So basically this is, you know, the different options for how you would go about funding it. We do need to add in how you pay for it section the incoming rent that we could expect from USDA. But as you can see, you know, we do need to find a little more space in our budget there for, you know, depending on if you do 20 years or 30 years, but we're still very close. And we've got, I mean, in all reality, folks, we've got a lot of revenue that has come in over the last 2 years, and we have a lot of additional revenue that will be coming in. We've been quite conservative on sales tax, and so I really feel comfortable that we can make this work. What the board will have to decide is, once we know the exact number, right, when every project is done, well, really once we have the bid numbers, we'll have to go out to bond. And then at that time, you'll have to decide how much of fund balance you want to use for a down payment versus, you know, do you want, you know, depending on interest rates at that time, how much do you want to bond? So we'll have to have those discussions. And then likely in 2023 or 2024, the first payments of the bond will come due, and that's when we'll have to make sure that we have that carved out in the budget appropriately. So this is a sketch. We're going to have more work to do on this in terms of, you'll have to talk about down payment, you'll have to talk about interest rates, and we'll have to talk about 20-year versus 30-year. Or you could do 15, 25. There's lots of different options for terms and conditions when it comes to bonding. So those are definitely future discussions that we're going to have. I also included a second page, which is basically high level. We have, once we have the exact square footage and utilization, we'll be able to go to our consultant, Vaneski Group, and they'll be able to tell us exactly what DSS is going to be able to chip in towards the project. But any space that's utilized by DSS, you know, if it's 100% of their space, then we get around 70% reimbursement. Some of the common areas we'll have to do time studies to see, you know, how much space, dedicated to DSS compared to OFA. But more or less, you know, we can't forget that they're going to be contributing towards the annual payments. So the state will be contributing towards the annual payments, their portion of the bond payment and operating maintenance of building. So those are.
At this point in our life, with what you put there, I think we can overcome most anything with a down payment.
Yeah, yeah.
At this point in our life, and in particular, with the prices of everything going up so much, or sales tax is going up so much.
True. Good point.
For this year, to put more down payment on that, so.
Yeah, and I cut it
personally,
off.
I don't think, and you know how I am, I personally don't think there's a problem.
Nope, I agree. And I cut it off at 3 million, but we could easily, you know, you guys have seen our fund balance. We could do more than 3 million down payment if that's what we wanted to do. It's all about, you know, what that annual payment, I mean, it's like anything you buy in your life. You got to figure out what that annual payment's going to be and how does it fit in your budget. So, but I feel very confident at this point that we'll be able to make this happen. But thank you, but we didn't go over.
We can do it like these with all those tax increases.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Exactly.
Yep, I agree with that. And we know for certain now that number 3 wind project is going forward. They've started construction. We still have a lot of hope about Deer River and the amount of solar projects that are coming on board. I was just chatting with Brittany today. She couldn't even give me an estimate of annual revenue because they're getting more and more every day. And we kind of set it up depending on different acres, different megawatts. So it was tough, but I think it's safe to say we're going to have a fair amount of solar. Right, and Roaring Brook next year as well. So, okay. Lewis County Community Center. So, I was able to chat with everybody individually about this project back in the wintertime. Since then, we've had some more discussions and fleshed some more things out. But you know, we're at the point where this project, you know, is really looking for a sponsor. You guys have seen some of the preliminary financial figures that I put together, and there's a lot of folks in the community at the state level, you know, in terms of grants and public and private funding that could pull this project together. But what it lacks, in all honesty, is a sponsor. It lacks someone that's saying, yep, we own this, we're putting it in the ground, and then you can allow some of these other elements to come together. So the goal of this today is to provide a high-level overview of the project. Everything from, well, pretty simple, who, what, where, when, and how is what we're going to try to discuss. And then I'd like to put it in the laps of the legislators and you guys kind of discuss and figure out, you know, what happens next. What level of support, if any, does the county see here? And what can we bring back to some of these folks that have been pushing this for quite some time? So let's start with what. What is a 35,000 square foot community center? This is the first floor plan there. It includes daycare facility classrooms, something we've talked quite a bit about. A community kitchen and dining area. We would plan to move our OFA meal site up there. I mean, that's something that's been discussed, but it would make a lot of sense. That would move from Maple Ridge. A fitness center, community rooms, indoor turf field, gymnasium, indoor walking track, playground, and other outdoor recreational facilities. I do have the blueprints brought up if you guys really wanted to get into close details, but here's what's proposed: first floor, second floor. What they've got here now this was all completed by Double Play. This was not completed by the county, but these are their preliminary engineering. You've got entryway here, community rooms off to the side, kitchen area here. Here's your daycare classroom area here, obviously facility locker rooms. You go into the multi-purpose field turf. I had talked to the YMCA. They were very positive about this. The YMCA in Watertown, they told me that just based on overflow from their facilities alone, they feel they could book this on a fairly regular basis, almost book it out for the year, just based on overflow from Watertown. So the demand, I mean, I'm not in the recreation business, but talking to their executive director in Watertown, they felt that there was enough demand in the region for an indoor turf field.
We've got enter into a contract for that?
What's that?
The Y in Watertown would enter into a contract to rent this for a piece of the year?
Nope.
No.
Well, we can talk about operations in a minute, but
Yep.
the reason I wanted to talk to the why was, okay, if we built this, would we even have enough business to keep it going?
Sure.
Their analysis, just based on, they run the old Ultimate Gold facility on Coffeen Street, and do they have another turf anywhere there? I think they're renovating in downtown. They're gonna have some more space, but they said they're booked out solid, and in fact they could use more space. So there's certainly demand. Was the point I was trying to get from them? Is, you know, is this demand in our region? They confirmed that they felt that there was.
Okay.
Gymnasium also on the first floor, multi-use gymnasium. You can see volleyball courts, basketball courts, and then some folding stands there. So nice concept.
Before you go, can you speak to the kitchen again for just a second?
I don't have a lot of details. It's a 20 cc.
I don't have any details.
Yeah.
When you move Maple Ridge down there,
Mm-hmm.
how many people could go there for lunch?
Oh,
Where would they eat?
yeah, they'd eat in these community rooms here.
In community rooms, okay.
Yep, so you've got a community room and right across from the kitchen. That's over 1,100 square feet. I don't think we rent much more than that for seating at Maple Ridge. In fact, probably less.
I don't think the
would say.
attendance
Yeah,
requires it right now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Second floor, so you got staircase here, elevator, I believe, and that brings you up to the second floor. I mean, again, this is just concept phase, similar to what we were just talking about before. You've got fitness center here on both sides, the green fitness center, group training and yoga studio, and then this is a track that walks all the way around. This middle is open for balls and such that may be flying through the air.
How big is the track, Randy? You know? I mean, I can see it there, but does it work out too?
1/10 of a mile, I think it said.
I thought that was too, Dick. I was going to say the same thing. I thought 10 laps was a mile,
Yeah,
but
I
I
think it is.
don't have it on the top of my head.
It's in that book they gave us.
Yeah. So this is all, you know, their concept, but this is basically, I could see something similar to that. When I lived in Ohio, we had a YMCA in town that was almost identical. I mean, it was the exact same except for they had a pool, but very similar setup. So it seems fairly standard to me. Concept what? This is kind of some renderings of what it could look like from the outside. So fairly simple. Who? Well, a lot of people. We're hoping, you know, the thought process here would be a broad partnership of community entities. Again, like I said, what we're missing is that leadership piece. You know, who's going to get this thing across the finish line? The pitch here would be, you know, what role could Lewis County play in leading that? Funding will be sought from grants, public contributions, and private contributions. We'll go over kind of the more detailed finances in a bit. Remaining funding would be provided through a bond by the county. So this is where the proposed plan really falls on us. Whatever can't be put together through the funding package, there has to be somebody at the end of the day holding the bag saying, yep, we're going to put this forward. The request is, will the county play that role as the ones that will ultimately own the project?
Has there been a wild guess at what would go in there for a figure on remaining funding?
Yes. Yep, and I'll get to that
Okay.
at the end. Yep, that's in the how phase.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Double Play will operate the new community center via MOU with the county. Double Play will pay Lewis County $120,000 a year to lease the facility, similar to JCC and the new education center. So very similar relationship. We own the building. We sign an MOU with Double Play for them to operate the building. So we don't want, at least my opinion is, we don't want county staff, you know, over there. We want them to staff it. We want them to maintain it, you know, and we want them to keep it going. You know, this is our contribution is the capital cost. Our contribution is not an annual subsidy for operations. It's up to them to keep the lights on and keep it going. Concept, where? Lamphere Street, Loudville. This is the site that has been traditionally what everyone has considered when they've been talking about this project. Double Play already has an option to purchase the property, so that means it's somewhat locked down. And phase 1 environmental is complete on the property. That's come back clear. So you can kind of see it without the building there. And I'm going to show you the concept in a minute, but basically this spot here would provide the entryway and then a secondary entryway over here. So you can kind of see that where you've got Lanphier Street here that comes to a corner. This is how you kind of enter, and then there's kind of a secondary pedestrian entryway over here. But
all secondary side streets, have you talked to the village about maybe upgrading them a little bit?
I have had no conversations with the village. I don't know what Double Play, you know, when they were doing this concept. I'm not sure.
That can be handled.
But yeah, they're. I mean, yeah, I'm going to be a neighbor over here pretty soon. So, so you know, one of the aspects here is before school and after school programs. In Watertown, the YMCA calls it SAC. At least they did when we were kids. But you know, if you're going to have kids there before and after school for daycare, you know, at least playground, some type of outdoor rec is an expectation. You know, all this stuff, the gazebo, the ball fields, the walking trails, you know, that's a lot of probably things that maybe are phase 2 or 3 type things. Getting a facility up with a little playground, I think, and obviously a parking lot would be more than enough to get us going.
Ryan, you
Yes.
talked about babysitting. Would that be
Yes.
for all, could that be for all day?
I'm not sure. They'd have to. My guess is that Double Play would have to probably contract that out with Hand in Hand or some other type of agency. But you can see they've built, you know, in the concept here. Oops, you've got 3, I believe, 3 large classrooms. So you know, you could, for pre-kindergarten or daycare, there's quite a bit of space here for that. Some administrative offices. So I think they're planning on having that utilized quite a bit. Concept when. Now this is, you know, really dependent upon a lot of factors that, you know, and really what the board wants to do here. But assuming that we want to get this going as quickly as possible, we'd pretty much be on a similar schedule to what we just talked about with CNS. You know, we'd have to really get into the nitty-gritty of design through the summer, bid the project, you know, sometime in the winter, project construction in the spring, and project completion in the spring of 2022, similar to what we just talked about. How? Here's the how, as in how do we pay for it, which is the most important thing. So, Dick, you were asking before. They have a new engineered estimate as of last Thursday, I believe, the 18th. That puts the total project cost at $13.65 million. Here are some of the funding sources that Double Play has already lined up themselves. Again, you know, if we take on this project, we're knocking on all these doors and making sure that the commitments are there.
Who's Dyson Foundation? I'm not familiar with.
Dyson is the Dyson vacuum cleaner. There's apparently a local tie to that company that is willing, you know, has pledged some foundation funds towards it.
That's a grant with no payback.
All these would, the goal of all these would be that they would take right off the top.
Okay.
You know, they take right off the top of the cost. Now some of them are question marks. The REDC, you know, look at REDC, DRI, or New York State. My personal belief, talking to Michelle Ledoux, talking to some folks, you know, with New York State, I think we should have no problem. If we were really committed to this project, I think we'd do quite well in the REDC in landing some grant money. I think probably 1.5 is probably a little low because they will fund up to 20% of the project, so you could potentially get more. Some of these other things are not necessarily set in stone. I mean, look at the individual donation. You know, that's something that's been thrown out there. I have never met with that person. You know, those are question marks that, you know, if the county takes on this project, we've got to flesh those out. Town of Loudville and Village of Loudville. You know, my personal opinion, and I know some of the legislators feel the same, is it's going to be in Loudville. You know, these folks need to step up as well. You know, they have money too. They have windmill money. And so, you know, there needs to be a collaborative effort here from all the surrounding towns and villages that are going to benefit. And then a capital campaign was something that Double Play had put in there as, you know, hey, we think, you know, in terms of other donations and folks that want to see this go forward, they think they can pull together another $500,000. Those are all ifs. Ifs, ifs, ifs. The bottom line is, whatever's left is what potentially, the discussion today is, are we willing to cover that, whatever is left, basically. So assuming we can get it to 7.5, maybe we can do better in terms of our EDC or downtown revitalization. Maybe we can do better with some of these foundations, I don't know. But, assuming we can get it, yes, Greg.
The Dyson Foundation, from what I've talked with Dan, is flush with money.
Okay.
So, because of the pandemic, there was not much going on, so there wasn't much funding going on. So he feels that, he might be able to get more out of that. And the 1 million individual donor is an individual donor who became very wealthy, was a graduate of, what, 73 or 4 class
64.
Huh?
69.
69. So he basically said he'll do $1 million. I don't think there's any doubt there.
If the county.
If the county, if the county comes up with their,
So,
funding.
You can see here that they've tried to do a good job lining up some things, but if you left right there, you're still not at, you're still not at the project cost.
Right.
There needs to be somebody at the end saying, we're pushing this thing across the finish line. And that's kind of what the request of the county is. How do we pay for it again? So if you take that figure, 7.15, and this is basically the same spreadsheet we just talked about for the other project, but you've got options. You can put some money down from fund balance, 1 million, 2 million, and you've got bond options here, 20-year, 30-year. So those, if you've got a 20-year bond with no money down, you're looking at about a $430,000 annual payment. A 30-year bond, no money down, 312, and obviously that changes if you put $1 million down, 2 million down. That can change. How do we pay for it? Well, we're going to hopefully get, as part of the MOU, Double Play has put in their operating budget, which the projected operating budget, which I've passed out to everybody. They're committing to $120,000. It's in their budget as quote mortgage payment. So that would be their commitment to the capital costs. The annual payment to Double Play, we already have in our budget $20,000 a year. I think that we can easily put that towards the bond rather than towards Double Play. The OFA meal program, that $15,000 is basically what we pay at Maple Ridge. We would no longer be paying that at Maple Ridge. We'd be over at Double Play, which would save us. And then the number 3 wind pilot, this is a new pilot that's starting in 2023, but their construction has begun just the last week or so. And since we last talked, the megawatts of that has actually increased. It was 280,000, it's up to 326,000 dollars the first year of that payment, and it goes up 2% every year thereafter. So utilizing that number 3 pilot, basically, that puts us, all things considered, at about $481,000 of funding set aside. Again, this is without tax increase, this is without taking money from other parts of the budget. This is money that either we don't have yet, but plan to have in terms of the number 3 pilot, or payments that would come from other things that we're doing that would be reallocated towards this. Remaining to be paid, as you can see, we're in the green here. So basically remaining to be paid is if you take these 2 numbers, right, subtract this number, and you get this here. So we're in the green any way you look at it. But there's no doubt about it, the only way we're in the green there is because of that number 3 pilot. That's how you're basically paying for this, more or less, would be through the number 3 wind farm pilot. So that is kind of a concept on how we would pay for it. Last question is why? What's the purpose of this whole thing? I'm not going to get too deep into that because everyone that I've talked to, I think, understands that it is a good idea. The question is not, is it a good idea? The question is, what's the county's role? And but just to hit these real quick, community physical wellness and mental wellness, obviously very important. Population retention and attraction. We talk a lot about keeping our young families here. This is something that you find. You find community centers like this in a lot of developing places. It's not something that we have yet in our community. Youth activity and diversion. Giving kids a place to go before school, after school, where they maybe won't get into mischief. Child care, something that we've talked a lot about. And then economic development is another one. We did have our planning department a few years ago did an economic impact analysis using economic impact software. And at that time, the annual economic impact was around $800,000 in terms of people traveling, people coming to Lowville, people buying more things, adding this value to our community. Momentum begets momentum, growth begets growth, that whole thing. So, with that, questions and discussion. I know we threw a lot at you in a short amount of time, but like I said, my goal today was just to put this on the tee for you folks and kind of let you guys discuss.
Yeah, Ryan, if I could for a minute. I don't know if anybody else got phone calls today, but before I got out of bed, I got a phone call. Then I got 9 more in the next hour.
9 more?
One person was 84 years old. One was my age, which I'm not going to disclose. A couple were middle-aged. One was 19, just got out of high school last year. And surprisingly enough, none of them from the village of Lowville. Because one of my fears was, well, this is going to be in Lowville. This is going to be all for Lowville. And they outlined communities, These people, some of them were from Lions Falls area down that way. Nobody from Osceola or Harrisville. But they were all supportive of the project. And then the last call I got was from Rob Gross at school. And one of the costs you don't have in here yet, or one of the incomes, he says that they're going to Watertown and Utica for a lot of indoor stuff that they're paying decent money for. On top of that, they draw 20, 30, 40 people to that, which spend money on other things too. So I guess what I'm trying to say is the calls I got at least were positive.
Dick, as you described, I'm in the outlying area.
Yeah.
And I looked at their participation numbers by town.
Yeah.
And, excuse me, I did a quick on it, but the participation was within 10 miles of Lowville.
Yep.
Was 69%.
Yeah, that's what I would say, yeah.
And I'm a little, I like the idea, but I'm a little concerned about the county spending $6.5 million for something that is not going to benefit the entire county as a whole.
Well, it might, Phil, because if we can do something to our drug problem that's killing us and eating our lunch with law enforcement and DA and everything else, there might be some costs there, and I'm just saying there might be, that would save our tax base because we're paying for money in other places.
And can I add one more, Phil, for you, is you still have a school in Harrisville. And I think they would participate in some of that indoor turf stuff.
I think so.
I think that his draw is to include the schools in some of this. And I think
Why aren't they now? Why aren't they coming now?
Because they don't have it.
They don't have it.
There's a facility there.
Where?
Double Play doesn't have a facility
turf.
now?
They don't have
No,
the
they don't have any turf.
I know they don't have turf, but they've got a facility.
They have a facility, but that's
And 0 people have come from my neck of the woods or Jerry's or...
Says others. Others 96 on here.
Oh, wow.
Other. I mean, it's 5.4%.
What would you say if I asked you for $6.5 million to do something up in Diana?
If it was logical, I wouldn't have a problem with it, though.
No, right.
I did ask Ryan for that. I said that what we're gonna give here, if we give anything, divide it amongst all the towns.
Exactly right.
It didn't show up.
They have utilization numbers.
I'm talking about every town get it. If they wanna join, it's gonna benefit from them. They kick the money back there, otherwise they use it for their stuff. I talk to everybody through my monthly meetings. They don't want us to spend taxpayer money on this stuff. And what I proposed to you before, so we're gonna have this discussion tonight, is why are we picking certain ones? If we wanna give money, give it to everybody that could benefit from it, and it's their choice whether they wanna join or they wanna use it for where they're gonna be. Because it's just like Phil said, when people work out of county all the time, there's a slim to no chance those kids down there are gonna get up here. I'm sorry, and I'm not being negative. And the other thing is, why are we picking who wins and who loses? And the second thing is, that if it's so great, then it needs to be funded privately. If it gets off the ground, fine, fine. And we'll rent and do what we can as far as that contributes. But to stick with a $6 or $7 million debt, we got one building we may be empty, so maybe we ought to hang around and see what happens over there. And maybe they can use that one. And I'll tell you what, I believe you get the people in, the whole public can have a discussion. You're not going to hear the same thing you're hearing here. And furthermore, this ought to be put on a referendum for fall. Let the taxpayers decide instead of us on this one, because it's just they're calling, they're trying to bombard people. It's election year and everything else. And if it's been so good, why hasn't it been built already?
There may be just a stigma, but the little thing that was on the news the other day, and it might have been a misstatement. It says a community center for Lowville.
Well, that's pretty much what it's going to be.
That's what it said in a little news release.
You know, I don't have a problem supporting it, but I have a problem supporting it at $6.5 million. But I could support it at what Double Play wants to pay, $120,000 a year or something like that. Maybe,
Well,
and that would be the max.
It's
But
obvious they're not going to make the no payments. That's why they need a cash cow or a sugar daddy.
it is a nice project. It
Yeah.
really is.
Oh, yeah.
But
So
but-
if you take out what the project is, the was it the planning department did the economic analysis? They're saying it could benefit $800,000 annually. Say that was even half as much, so it could bring in $400,000, and we're paying $250, so we're making $150. So regardless of what it is, it's an investment. If you're only thinking about it monetarily.
Why not build three? One north, south, and central, and then everybody can go to one.
So 3 $13 million projects?
No, I mean, do you need that?
Well, you
I
do.
guess the thing is, we have summer school down there where the kids get to play, so maybe we ought to hire someone to put in those schools so the kids go there in the evenings.
I think it's more about the turf. It's the large indoor turf that people do.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you, it's gonna be great. They're gonna put $4,000 a month in. Let them sign a contract that if we build it, that's what's gonna happen. I guarantee you won't get it. In the same way the investors you got up there. It'll surprise me if those investors put the kind of money in they're listed. I mean, to be honest with you, I think it ought to go referendum.
You know, when you're talking about the economic impact, you're not talking necessarily 800,000 coming to the county. You're talking 800,000 spent in the county, of which we would get sales tax from. So it's not like that economic impact is coming directly back to us, although it does definitely help offset, you know, but
And who's putting maintenance in? Because I didn't see any maintenance up there.
Maintenance is in Double Play's budget. They'd have to cover that.
What's it at then? I mean, I don't remember.
Can I borrow your thing?
yeah, sure. I didn't mean
I mean, I believe in the concept and stuff like that, but I just don't believe it's the way to go.
So what is the way to go?
Maintenance is $10,000, which you've got $10,000 and utilities at $40,000, insurance at $15,000. So their operating budget for the facility, operating cost first year is
If we own
$423,000.
the building, wouldn't we be insuring it? They can't insure something they don't own.
We would have to insure it.
Yeah, we would, yeah, we'd have to,
Well,
yeah.
then take
They
that
would
out
have
of
to
there,
go-
so that's another cost.
Okay, then they can pay us, you know, 135 instead of 120.
Does the attorney have any input to this?
These are pledges, so we certainly would want to have these people locked in terms of their commitment. And what do we do if they don't pay? that's gonna fall on us, I assume. There are private-public partnerships, but we're assuming that Double Play is gonna get this, but I think if we're building the building and we want it to be a community center, then we may have to go out to RFP to see who's going to actually manage it and run it, and it may not necessarily be Double Play.
Think about that.
Without getting into costs, I think conceptually this is a great idea, and I like this idea a lot. I did get a call from a constituent, a senior citizen woman in my district, and we're kind of close to Loudville. It's not that far away, but she said that she would like to see something like this get expanded. Looking at the designs, the things that I was thinking of in my mind, two groups who are going to make good use of a facility like this. One is homeschoolers or homeschool groups, and another would be private sports leagues. And thinking about in the last year what we saw happen in the schools, a lot of parents went to homeschooling, and a lot of them aren't going to be coming back to the public schools. They're thinking about, where can I send my kids for sports leagues? Where can I send my kids for the after-school activities, the things that they were used to through the public school system? Is there room for that in the private sector, essentially? And I know in Loudville, or in Adams, there's a facility a lot like this. It's a privately owned facility, and they have private sports leagues. You get your kids enrolled, and it's kind of like a little bit more than what we had when we were kids. It's much more competitive. They do more traveling. That's the direction it's going in. And some kids are just doing that instead of public sports. And that's a facility like this would make sense. And I understand the point too about, yes, it's in the village of Loudville. I think if you build it and if it's large and it's a nice facility, it will be a magnet for the other towns. And I understand what you're saying, Jerry. It's a little bit like the discussion we had about the school resource officers. What do the other places get? Well, the town of New Bremen's not going to get a facility, but we don't have space for a facility like this. You're only going to get one of these in a county like Lewis because we're too small. If something like this is going to happen, you're only going to get one. Maybe Jefferson County could have 3 or 4 or 5.
I agree with you. But if we're gonna spend that kind of money, I would like to give a little bit to my towns down there and villages to do what they feel's right for them.
No, and I'm gonna go back to my...
Whether it's on their park,
yep.
Whether it's to finish their ball field, and the other thing about homeschool. Now, they have paid taxes, so why can't they use that facility?
No, I agree,
after hours?
Absolutely.
So that's a question. So
well, that's
we're
a state policy issue, but yeah.
This project that everybody's gonna come, but we might be able to approach the schools and say, hey, they're paying taxes too.
Yeah.
What can they have for sports or after the hours? So let's reach out and look at all this stuff.
Yeah.
Not just go, I just don't think what we're seeing the money's gonna be there that's proposed. And the other thing is, I'm sorry, but I don't think we ought to be picking and choosing who wins and who doesn't. That's just me personally.
I guess I got a question too, and maybe I'm looking at it all wrong. We're looking at a $15 to $20 million building project for the county, putting out a bond for that. If we did this, we're putting out a bond for that. The hospital is still looking at a bond to do their addition renovation. Does it come to the point where all of a sudden we've got more going out and our rating or whatever doesn't look as good as it did?
No, we are in a position to borrow about as much as we want. I mean, you get to a point where if you want to do more projects, then you're going to have to find a limit. But we also have more money coming in with, big wind projects and solar projects over the next few years. And we've been far too conservative on sales tax in the budget. So we're consistently having more money. So I think it's a good question. It's a very good question. My answer is we should be fine. And on a revenue side of the equation, I don't have any worries about us making these payments.
Right.
But with what Tom just said, think about it. We'd have bonds of $60 million, roughly. And we got a budget of 100, well, combined, I guess. That's a substantial debt load for a budget of 100. I understand what you're saying about paying for it, but it does not look good to owe $60 million.
I think it's a weak debt load considering we've had a decade of 1% interest rates and have done nothing. That's my personal opinion.
Oh, to be young.
Ryan, in your cost estimate here that you've got the total funds available of 481, and then you've got 168,302 if we do a 30-year.
Mm-hmm.
With the parentheses across that, that gives us that above.
Right.
So why don't we take the 168,302 and divide like Jerry and Phil want to do and give it to the town? And that's some of our windmill money, so that passes it around to everybody in the county.
If we want to contribute it back in, I don't care. But at least everybody benefits. Where I just don't feel it's going to happen. And it's nothing against Lava. I think it's a great project, but I don't think we should pick and choose. If it's so great, it should go on its own. It's what everybody else has to do.
I mean, is there another option to choose from? You said we shouldn't pick and choose, but I mean, like, I haven't heard from people about anything else that could offer what Double Clay is offering.
Well, I think you're hearing from certain people. I think if we put this out public like we're doing now, and we ask for input, I think we're going to see a hell of a lot different than what I'm hearing now. Because I did take the time to ask my towns hypothetically. You know, we're talking about investing in a project and this and that. What would you want me to do? What would you consider? And I told them roughly what it was, and I was just at $1 million figure. And it was pretty much, if you're going to do that, we would rather see it, because we know how to use it.
What would they
And we
use it
got
for?
needs for it.
Do they have ideas that they would use it for?
Well, I mean, you look at all these
I'm
towns
just
and stuff
asking
like
because
that.
I don't.
And I'll pick, well, Town of Lewis, I'm familiar.
Right.
They're lacking from putting all the lights up
Oh,
in their ballpark. Okay, they got a grant. We got a $44,000 grant to start the system, but since then, they haven't been lucky on the grants and stuff. So, you know, it's a small town, 200 and some odd $1,000 budget, this, that, and everything else. Another $30,000 is a hell of a lot to raise from the people.
right.
And, you know, then we pick, and we're gonna give X amount away, or build a building and stuff, which honestly, and it's not negative, it's just that more than likely, half of these people are not gonna be using it.
No,
For
I don't.
one is,
I hope the
if you
towns.
gotta be a member, which you do, we could even really get the village of Port Light, when they were down there, they helped fund this. So it's gonna take, even after it's bought, it's gonna take people in memberships, and it's gotta grow for them to even be able to pay their bills. So the thing is, I'm not convinced it's there, and I'm not sure what the costs are if people are gonna be able to afford it. Yeah, it's like ice cream. If it's free, everybody wants it. If it costs you a nickel a cone, hell no.
So let me throw this out there a little differently, because I think I wasn't as thoughtful with Phil and Tom's question. Sorry. We've run budget surpluses the last few years. Last year we ran a very big budget surplus. We have stimulus money coming in. We have a fund balance that, quite frankly, is getting very high. We work very hard to keep operational expenses in check. We don't grow the operational budget of the county. If you look across the board, other than state mandates that grow, we have done a great job. Our highways portion that of the tax levy has gone up like 3% in 6 years. Each of our operational aspects, we really work hard to keep in check. So we've got tons of green energy projects coming on board. We've got an already large surplus. We have an already large fund balance. I think another way to ask the same exact question is, what are we going to do with all this money? I mean, we have to start thinking about that, because I can operationalize it, but I don't think that's what we want. We want an operational county government that is in check and where it belongs. But you know, eventually we're gonna have to get to the point where we have to have some outlet for some of these funds.
That money you're discussing was contributed by everyone in the county.
Yeah, I agree.
And our first obligation is to take care of the county first. Via what we did this afternoon with upgrading our facilities to make them proper, and that's our first obligation. But again, everybody contributed to that fund balance. And everybody should get a piece of that fund balance.
Sure.
Properly, in my opinion. But again,
A fair amount of that fund balance is sales tax money, extra, because we're conservatively.
right, exactly. Yeah, for a few years now.
I thought we discussed of a fund coming out of our fund balance for the towns and villages. If they had a project like Gary's Light project, that we would look at helping them out and stuff.
That was in a community fund that,
Yeah.
So number 3 is
still
gonna contribute.
putting it together.
Right, so I mean, we can contribute to these other communities. We were gonna have some kind of a panel, take a look at the projects and fund to it. So I don't see it like we're leaving them out totally. You just can't fund this project in a small community. You know, Lowell's about the smallest you can have to fund it. And
Well,
as you can see from their records here, it benefits a lot more than the people that live in the village of Lowell.
Well, let's put it to referendum then.
So could you reach out to the schools and see, in our county, to see if they'd be interested in using a facility like this?
Well, let me throw my thoughts out here. I think there is value in this project. I'm not comfortable that these numbers that they're presenting are solid. You know, the REDC. So what I would like to see is, I would like Double Play to get some firm numbers of what they can actually come up with. Talk to the town of Loudville, get an MOU from the town of Loudville, the other towns, put in the CFA application to REDC for the full 20% instead of the 1.5. You know, the marketing, the capital campaign, you know, have them come up with an effort to actually, you know, see what they can come up with and get some real numbers here before, you know, I think we need some real numbers from them of what they can actually come up with before we can have a discussion on how much the county has to come up with in order to see the thing go.
That's well put, Larry. And in addition to that, when we do our thing with the buildings, we're gonna have a firmer foundation on how things are gonna proceed for cost-wise.
So, you know, and I have Osceola, you know, Harrisville, Osceola.
Yeah.
You have the town of Lewis.
I can't see Montague coming
I
up
wouldn't even
either.
dare bring this up in the town of Osceola.
Well, I feel you have to. And it's a discussion. I don't care one way or the other. But on the same aspect, the question I asked, and what I got is more than likely they wouldn't be up here because it's a half an hour up and a half hour back. And most people, let's get real, work outside the county. So what's going to happen to those kids if they got to be transferred a certain distance? So that's where I'm coming from, looking at it somewhat realistic.
Particularly,
You know, I do think it's a good idea, but on the same aspect, I guess one of the questions, instead of putting that kind of money in, could it be done in phases? And see how it goes, instead of jumping in whole hot. Because if it doesn't go, we're stuck with X amount of dollars invested in the building. And no offense, we just finished we just took on the project of all the buildings we need.
Well, anecdotally,
And it's not gonna sell real well in Loudville, no offense, if nobody's using it. You might be able to rent it, but that's the thing I don't think we should be in. So, I mean, I can live with Larry, but on the same aspect, I think you need to reach out to the taxpayers and we need to have a discussion, because being a smart bottom, if we're collecting all
That's
this
a-
money, maybe we're raising too much through taxes.
That's a good point too, because we're all getting positive, supportive calls. I've gotten several, I've gotten emails, but they're all coming from one source. They're all coming from Double Play and the people that utilize it. You know, it's not a true representation of county, you know,
Except for that one
residential
phone call,
opinions.
right, Larry?
What's that?
Except for that one phone call you got. He's $1 million donor.
You know something, Greg? I had a conversation with $1 million donor,
Yep.
and it was $250 on the call. That's part of the reason why I'm not comfortable with these numbers, now that you bring it up.
What's the hurry?
There's no hurry. It's just,
We're
this is
talking
something that
about-
has been asked of the county. It's something that has been brought forward for 5 years or more, something that's a project that's sat on the back burner. I don't want you to think that, you know, that I'm walking in here saying this is something that we have to do. My job as manager is to take requests, put them up, and let you guys discuss them. You know, that's what the purpose of this is. But I would encourage you to start thinking about, you know, this revenue that's going to be coming in and the fund balance that we have. You know, we can spend it. I mean, I can spend it on county operations, but I think our county operations are doing fine. You know, we should find outlets in the community to improve the community with these funds that we have. That would be my recommendation. And to kind of what Lisa said before, what are the other ideas? I mean, if you got a ball field that needs lights, let's start lining some of this stuff up. I mean, we gotta find a way to do something.
We never ask those questions and reach out. It's certain ones we do it for, it's certain ones that we apply for, and we don't offer a blanket policy. I've never heard any of the towns I represent, I've received from the county that we can apply for grant funding and will help.
Which that community development fund was supposed
Well,
to do.
that was a
Let's
start.
that. But it isn't ready yet, I guess.
Right.
It can be at any time, Phil.
So, well, let's.
We got
Is the money in there?
We got money there. We got.
Let's lump it all
He's telling
together.
us we got 18 million.
There's no money in that fund, right?
Well, let's put it in.
To speak of.
We can make a motion, put it in right now.
We need to go back and look at the minutes.
Well, I'll make a
I think
motion
it was-
that
I
we
think it
put
was money talked about.
$250,000.
Number 3 wind project, I believe, as part of their pilot, is supposed to contribute some, so that there will be some coming forward. The larger solar projects have also been hit up for this fund. So the IDA continues to work on it, but that's something that's coming from the IDA side. So.
But
Well,
it's still going out.
you know, obviously, we're not at a comfort level on these numbers, so let's go back to Double Play and see if they can, you know, firm up what they can come up with, and maybe they can increase that number to where we can get to a comfort level that we're
I'm
comfortable.
still new at all this. Can we set up a public hearing to have people come in and talk about this, or is that further discussion down the road, or?
Fine.
It was on the agenda for tonight, you know, wasn't it? I think it went out, so unless we're gonna vote on a local law or something like that, people aren't gonna, they can show up if they want to.
Can we put it up, Joan, can we put it up for a referendum?
We could.
By August 20th.
Huh?
Yeah, we have to have it in by August 20th.
Because it gets voted on in November.
I'm fine with that
That's fine.
idea.
I'm good with that, are you?
Public referendum,
Well,
and people say go.
yeah,
for it.
let's
I'm not on board with the public, so we're putting potentially okay, now I'm taking the other side, spending $7 million by public referendum. Is that the idea? We put it out to the people to vote on, because maybe you'll get
Well-
1,000 people to show up and they all belong to Double Play. I mean,
That's the way it goes.
You know what, that's the way it goes.
It
They're all
depends upon
taxpayers, aren't they?
hey, Fred.
How you're gonna design the question.
Well, that
And
answers
what, and how they're gonna answer it. Do you want the county to be involved, for instance, in investing a large sum of taxpayer dollars for a privately run community center?
Can we just do random referendum like that? No, I don't think we can.
I mean, you
do that.
you can also, you can set it for the next meeting too, to have a hearing, have another public hearing on it. We can set a public hearing like we do for all the the CDBG grants and all, you
They
know,
don't count.
before we go out to a referendum.
Well, if we're getting ready to spend 7 million, I think we'd get them, but I think it's too
Yeah.
quick. I think it needs to be a longer time frame if we're gonna set a date to try to do a public hearing, so we can get word
I
out.
think Larry had it right.
I wouldn't be surprised if you all
Lock in
don't start getting more
numbers.
emails
We need
and
to
phone
know
calls
what
after this meeting.
request
So
truly
what
is.
would,
And
what would
estimates
make
too.
people comfortable? A lower financial commitment?
Well, originally when it started, it eased in like kicking in a million. And then as things have progressed, it's gone from here to there to there. And it's just kind of like, you know, as some people buy in, I'm like Larry, I have trouble with the numbers. I know you're getting hammered, I know some of these other people are getting hammered too. I'll be honest with you. I know I was told I was supposed to get some phone calls, but I have not received one.
I haven't either.
I haven't either.
So I guess the thing
I'm
is,
disappointed about
as
that.
far as I'm concerned, they're preying on the younger, more gullible ones right
Are you
now.
calling me
Yes, I am.
Oh,
Yes, I am. I'm giving you the benefit of the doubt.
Jerry.
I
And it's
know.
election
Yeah.
year, it's always
You
happened
should
here
have
in
left it at
Lewis
young,
County.
Jerry.
Yeah, you should have left that young.
It's always
Andrea,
happened.
give him a little.
I got a
thank you.
question.
This same stuff happens in
Oh,
election
Andrea
time
must
every
be
year.
gullible too.
Oh, my.
Wow.
I needed that tonight.
Yeah.
So, I agree with what Larry's saying, you know, this is very much a concept phase, and I think we're having a good discussion. The issue with the numbers is, I believe we're gonna continue to run into the same wall. Everything's a hypothetical until you have that anchor that's saying, we're moving this or we're not moving it. Loudville, we're moving it, you in or you're out. Dyson, we're moving it, you're in or you're out. You know, everything else is hypothetical. So I think we can go back to all these people, you're still gonna get hypothetical
Well,
answers.
let's pick a number that we're willing to put in. And if they
Okay.
can't close the gap, the hell with it.
So like if Double Play could do something for 5, if they had 5 million, they could do something. So then if we say, okay, we're comfortable with 5, and then if all these other places commit to it, then the project can be made whole. But then that goes back to 20% with the grant. So I guess that's.
And my question would be, are we the ones building it and owning it, or is it
Yes.
Double Play doing it and we're just contributing because it's a community service?
If we're holding the note and paying for it, I
Yeah.
think we ought to be in charge of it, no offense.
Well,
Well, I don't know if you're going out to bond for it. If it's gonna be 4 or 5 million, maybe you're just gonna,
Well, if it's that, but we're talking about anywhere, as I've heard figures between 9 and 12, or 7. Well, but still, if we're $1 million, it's a hell of a lot different discussion than it is 7, as far as I'm concerned.
The other thing is, if you ask me, do you care if I spend $7 million? I'm gonna say hell no. But if you ask me, do I wanna spend $7 million with these benefits for the county, because we're all county residents, regardless of where the heck we live, I'm gonna give you a different answer probably, if I like what the benefits and outcome to the building.
Yeah, but it's kind of like this. I represent the people where I come from,
But
so
did you
I'm
tell
gonna
them the
follow what they
benefits
feel.
of what they're gonna have? Did you explain the project to them? I couldn't, because I've only looked at it for a short period of time. It's like asking a question without putting out the communication.
Well,
When you get
there you go.
Ron, you haven't said anything in 3 hours.
Yeah.
I know, and it's still
Not 3
late, and it's still
I've
late, Lisa.
occupied this time. I apologize.
I still think, I'll agree with Jerry, that let's put it out to a public referendum in November, and we can get it all over with.
Well, you know, another way of looking at it is 1%, a 1% increase in our tax levy is about $100,000, right? So, what, you know, regardless of where the money comes from, at $300,000 a year for the next 30 years, we're looking at a 3% tax levy increase. Or we're going to spend 3% of the tax levy on this, whichever way you want to look at it. So, you know, it's a big number.
But where he says,
And
how do we
maybe
pay
there's
for
some
it?
way of justifying that, I don't know, but I still think we need
Larry,
to,
where this says, how do we pay for it, double play payment is $120,000. That's nothing to do with the tax levy or taxpayer money or any of that, right? Annual payment to double play, which we've already agreed to, is $20,000. Again, that doesn't raise,
number 3 pilot is $326,289.
Exactly.
That's 3%.
exactly, $326,289. Still isn't gonna raise the taxes.
I didn't say it was gonna raise the taxes.
Oh,
I
okay,
said
I
it's
misunderstood
worth
that.
about 3% of our tax levy.
Okay, I misunderstood.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it, is it, and I think we should look at what else we spend about 3% on. What we spend more.
And maybe there's a way of
Then 3%.
justifying that 3% on this project. I think the project has value. The question is the value worth 3% of the tax levy?
How much do we, Ryan, how much do we raise, how much, in the budget, how much did we gain by the .86 we raised the taxes? Wasn't it closer to $200,000?
I thought it was around 150, but our levy, if you keep it very simple, our levy is around $17 million. So you can find 1% of that, 0.001.
It's 175.
Yeah,
170, so
So this is
2%,
2%
basically,
then.
not 3.
Okay.
You're looking at 2%. Hey, it's all dollars, you know, it's all
Well,
dollars.
And
But
I would like to think that we're a county that would.
You know, if we
spend
sit there,
2%
how
on
much do we pay for that JCC study?
The JCC study?
Yeah, that JCC study that we get every year. They could
20,000.
questionnaire,
free 5,000. We contribute 5,000.
5,000 toward it. Well, didn't one of the big things was childcare? We got Brittany Burris right now, not Burris anymore. But Brittany Davis looking at how to get childcare into this community.
I still think we need to get some real numbers so that we know what the real ask is. Right now, it's all hypothetical.
Joan, what would that be? I mean, an MOU is not, what kind of a binding, what do we need to call it? A letter of,
An MOU or
something,
Letter of intent.
Yeah.
a letter of commitment, maybe?
When we went through this with JCC, we had them sign a letter of intent before we built the facility. Once the facility was
We did
built.
an MOU,
Yes,
right?
yeah.
And then, when it was built, we entered into an actual lease.
Yeah, and so we ought to do that with each of the people. That's what you're asking for, Larry. and I think
Not
that's
for us
right.
to do.
Yeah,
well,
necessarily.
Double Play is the one that should initiate that
Sure.
process.
yeah.
But I would think if we had a letter of intent, you know, that firmed up these numbers that they've given us so that we got a handle on what they really have.
That's a very reasonable.
And it
But
could
in
be
the
even
end-
more.
In the end, they can
That's
say
what I'm
anything you want to say.
saying. You know,
Yeah.
if they can get,
No-
if they can get the ask down, that's something
anything you
we're
want.
more comfortable with. You know,
Now he's
No
talking to
different.
police.
But it's up to
I
them
should
to
have
sell.
should never spoke to Bear.
Yeah, absolutely. You could get to something where if they can get commitments for all of these, they've got the 7 million plus they still need to fund. We could see what else they could squeeze up from other donors by saying we'll match every dollar 50 cents or something like that maybe. And that way we're not putting it in, but they're like, oh, we're so close to hitting our goal, and suddenly people start coming out of the woodwork, you know, to put money into it. I think there's a role for us to play. I don't think it has to be that $7 million, even if it means we don't have to own the facility, you know. And there's potential.
That's a good way of,
Yeah.
I like the idea. I like this conceptually. I think it's a great idea. I like us being involved, but I'm uncomfortable, like you said, Jerry and Larry and everybody else, with the dollar figure. I think that's a lot to ask the people to put into it. A little too much.
I think I agree with what you're saying, and really, they are good salesmen at Double Play.
They are. Yeah.
And they need to sell it.
Yep.
And if they sell it like we think they can sell it, then they probably will get more money, just like you just described, because they are good salesmen at it. But it's up to them, not us, to sell it.
And it's even, like you and I talked about, trying to get a commitment from all the towns that would use it. what would they be willing to contribute? And the other thing, and I know this is, but how much is a monthly membership gonna cost? Have some idea what it is. Because that will allow people to see if they can even come close to it, you know, where, oh, I'd like to join, and, you know, I think it's great. But then again, when you look at it financially, if it's $60 a month per person, if it's 20 or 60 for a family, at some price, that if they really want to do it, they can afford to do
At
it.
your age, it's $30 a month. Jerry.
Pardon?
At your age, it would be $30 a month.
Well, I'm lucky I can make it around the track once, so yeah.
No insurance that comes with it.
It's not a timed effort. You can take as long as you need.
No, but you know, the skin in the game again from whoever wants to get into it, and even down there, because some people throw in. It's like Port Life. I told them, you know, when we gave them the $40,000 before, I said, you guys start budgeting if you want this to go. So, and you get people saying, well, yeah, we'd come participate. Well, let's get them on the damn hook somehow. So we know where we're sitting.
So double play, basically these numbers that we have here are from double play. I think letters of intent from each of these funding sources is a fantastic idea. That'll nail this down. Is it okay if the county continues? I mean, we haven't done much other than me listening to double play and putting together this presentation. We haven't done anything. Can we work with some of these entities with double play, or do you want them to be the ones that go out and then come back with more stuff?
I think if you have one source, it's better than two. You might get confused.
Yeah.
Good point.
And
What do you mean by work? Can we work with double play?
I don't see the town allowable or village allowable. Some of these places are not politically bold enough, if I can be honest, to put something on paper as a commitment unless there's someone else standing next to them saying, we're committed too. Loudville's gonna say, nope, we're not doing anything. They're not gonna put it on paper unless there's someone else there with them. I honestly believe that. And same with the village.
well, okay.
And the state's not gonna
And
give
we're
us
asking
anything. The state's not gonna give us
250
anything.
on those.
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess I could live with 250,000 to get them to invest, but nothing more. Because I hate to say it, more than likely they're not going to do it anyway.
You mean annually or one time?
No, if they chip in 250,000 to the town and the village,
For the project cost.
then I could see us throwing in matching there.
Okay.
What I'm saying, I guess what I'm saying is, can I help double play, hold their hand, try to nail some of this down? Or do you not want the county involved? That's what I want to say.
I personally don't think we should be in. I think they need to present it to us and come up with what we got to fund. That's the way I feel about
So, when I interviewed for the Board of Legislators, I said 3 things. Mental health, which we're working on, but this is something that could add to that. Jobs and childcare. This hits all 3. But what also is hitting jobs is the hospital hiring 30 CNAs. But how else are we gonna get these people to come to our community? We need to invest in our community. If we don't invest in things in our community, then those 30 positions are going to stay open at the hospital. You know, no matter how much we pay them. If there's nobody to watch their kids, if they don't have anything to do here, then they're going to stay in Watertown.
it. But don't you, I mean, maybe I'm wrong in my reasoning. Don't you think that's an opportunity if people know there's a need, that individuals would start daycare? I mean, I kind of think we've got a lot of entrepreneurs and stuff like that, and it may be limited to the amount of what each group can do. But I'm not, you know, I guess that's my thing. So we're building it for daycare, and that's part of it. But on the same aspect, I'm not sure somebody else can provide the same thing, or maybe 3 or 4 people.
I hope they can. And so for every 8 children in Lewis County, there is 1 certified daycare spot. So if 3 other people do it, we will still need 3 more.
Well, maybe a whole bunch of people up in West Lyden would be.
I hope so.
Osceola.
But how are you going to get them there?
You know what, for daycare, they'll go anywhere.
Yeah, I will, I'm talking about taking my kids to Great Bend for daycare.
The problem
Because it's so convenient to go
The
to Great
problem
Bend,
with
so.
childcare, it's the barriers of entry. It's very difficult in New York to start. You can't just start a childcare business in your garage. Like it's, you know, it's hard. It costs a lot of money.
It didn't used to be like that.
No,
The state got
absolutely.
involved, and now they've wrecked the whole system of grandmother watching 4 or 5 kids before and after school.
I think in New York City or something, they required a master's degree to do childcare. They just completely, you know, there goes every grandmother who does childcare for their families.
So yeah, I think it's a big commitment, but I think it's worth it. And also, if we do like a half thing where it's a lot smaller, I think it would be a community center. But I think if we do the big, huge, then it's going to be an attraction.
Yeah.
You could probably get people to come from other counties. They will drive 45 minutes for an attraction because there is not a lot to do here. If you didn't realize, I don't know if you guys realize.
Call up the Y in Watertown and ask them. Ask the director up there. How far do those people travel for those sports teams up there on that dirt field?
There's a
We
lot
travel
of
units from Lowell.
Yes.
When I was raising my daughter, I traveled all over with her for swim. Rochester, anywhere, you know. So that's the way it goes. You do what you gotta do for your kid, and I think that's the way people in West Life do that. I don't know for sure. They all might be in caves up there. I don't know.
Where's that?
West Life?
I think I'm more than comfortable, obviously, with Ryan helping double play to see what we can
I'm
do.
fine with that.
Yeah. See if we can get commitments and, you know, we don't have to, I don't think we should tie ourselves to that 7 million figure, and I don't want to put it out to a public vote. I would like to give us flexibility. If we're going to vote no, let's just vote no, but I don't want to see us, I mean, this is what we talk about this all the time. We were hired to exercise judgment and bear the consequences of it if we get it wrong.
That's fine.
But I want to talk to my town too, because I haven't discussed it with my board yet.
I'm missing something.
You playing a fiddle next?
Yes.
He makes fiddle lessons.
What hot button issues?
Okay, so we're good, we'll firm up the commitments and then we're gonna revisit this.
So you're saying there's a chance.
Okay, I lost my agenda.
More. Oh, see you.
Okay,
10 more minutes.
resolution.
Resolution number 139, resolution authorizing and ratifying tentative agreement and final contract between the County of Lewis and the United Public Service Employees Unit, representing the Sheriff's Road Patrol Unit.
Someone like to make that motion or move it? Tom, second by Dick. Discussion.
Thank you to everybody that worked on it.
They did a good job,
And just for the record, so everybody knows that, as you saw from the tentative agreement, this bargaining unit did agree to form the new health tier, and that's really what we as a county were trying to have happen, and so that's reflected in the compensation.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Do you need a per person vote for this or not?
Nope.
Are you, no, I thought you'd raise your hand. You were
Nope.
Okay, motion carries.
You ready for an adjournment motion?
Are we gonna take our,
I'll come over and give it to you.
We're actually checking into that
Yeah.
to make sure that the
Later in the fall.
They have the
broadband is
broadband,
set
yeah,
up correctly and stuff.
broadband requirements that we need, right?
I haven't heard back from the fire chief yet.
Okay. So,
Or maybe Jerry could speak to him.
What?
hosting a legislative session at the Westside Firehouse. And whether in August or September at this point.
I can ask, I mean, we've had one down there before, if somebody else wants to have one in their district, but I will ask.
We just want to live stream it, that's all. So we gotta know if they've got broadband. Yep.
Okay. Yeah.
If not, you know what? If not, we will figure it out. I think we need to go down to Westside, and it's the right thing to do. So if we gotta get a gigantic hotspot, Connor can figure it out.
Yeah, and I appreciate going to Westside, but there's some other towns that we haven't been
$100
through.
million for the broadband already going in.
Is there
Don't knock it.
somewhere else you'd like to go for your last meeting?
What?
Is there somewhere else you'd like to go for your last meeting?
Right here.
Okay.
We'll be
I
here for the
felt the
last
same
one, we
way.
get there in October.
Okay.
We can get up.
I'll make a motion we adjourn.
Are we gonna talk about the overtime thing in the executive session?
Do you want to do that?
Can we do that?
For which one? I know better than that.
I think we need a quick
You reconcile yourself.
executive session, so if someone would make
On,
that.
an executive session to discuss a personnel matter in a department.
I'll make that motion.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right, do you want a 5-minute break or you want?